Hey, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. The Big 12 is just flat out wide open this year. I know that maybe if you have been preoccupied, and understandably so, with a lot of non-football related matters over the last few months, you may just have the automatic defaulting setting in your head for the Big 12 of it's Oklahoma's until someone proves otherwise. And that's fine. I can fully understand that mentality, but there's the old Big 12 schedule Colin's showing you if you're watching on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel here. And boy, oh boy, I'm seeing some lazy predictions out there. Let me tell you, it's not lazy to predict Oklahoma to win the Big 12. Okay, if anything, that's just using conventional wisdom. But it is lazy if you're doing it just because it's Oklahoma. I mean, no one else out there matches them. I give Oklahoma every benefit of the doubt. So you're not telling me anything about Oklahoma I don't already know. But I think I may be about to tell you something that if you haven't been paying attention to college football over the last few months, you may not know. That Sooner team is vulnerable. Right now, they know they're vulnerable. And while they may eventually get some guys back, a lot of questions. May still very well win the Big 12, may still be a playoff team. But if they are that this year, they will have answered emphatically a lot of questions in a very impressive manner. So it's my opinion that the Big 12 is wide open right now, and it's also my opinion a lot of them out there know it. Texas knows it, TCU knows it, Baylor, Iowa State. You know, I have some bias here because for some reason I adopted Iowa State as my program in the Big 12 a long time ago. Never been to Iowa. Maybe change that this year, we'll see. But a lot of them out there know it. So let's dive in. I don't need to rehash this for Sooner fans or maybe for diehard Big 12 fans, but if you're just playing catch up, even you probably know, okay, Jalen Hurts, he had a storybook year out there, storybook career, and now Spencer Rattler, that kid who was highly touted one time, and I think he's a redshirt freshman, or that's probably what you think about Spencer Rattler. You know the name, and you've seen his name in the preview magazines, you've seen his face on the front of the magazines, and okay, well, listen, if he's good enough for Lincoln Riley, he's good enough for me. Again, not a bad strategy to have in life. Spencer Rattler starts at quarterback, think you know what you're going to get, don't know what you're going to get. But then you have a lot of questions. Kennedy Brooks, for example, who was going to be their starting tailback, opts out of the season. And that's after Trey Sermon, because Kennedy Brooks was in the way, transferred to Ohio State, where, I don't know if you've heard this or not, they're not going to have college football this year. So if we were sitting here in January, the two options for OU at running back that we thought they'd have are both gone. I know you guys have a lot of promising young talent there. I don't think that they are chewing their fingernails off at night in Norman, Oklahoma, worried about whether they're going to have a competent tailback or two or three to put on the field. But you're not as good at that position as you were before those departures. I think we can all admit that. We move on. We've had a couple of pass rushers lost to varying degrees of season for DUI and drug charges. Had a couple of receivers, whether it be an injury, I think, to Hazelwood, had a DUI or a drug charge with another one up there too. So basically, I don't need to go down all this list. But running back is at the least a question there. Depth along the defensive line is a major, major question there. And also, you know, wide receiver, which you never think about with Oklahoma. You just think that they grow them on trees. Hey, it's a question out there right now. Not to mention quarterback, because you just assume you know what you have at quarterback. So my point is, there is not one team and everyone else out there right now. There are a lot of teams out there that can win the Big 12 this year. OU is certainly one of them, but I think Texas is one of them. I think Iowa State's one of them. A lot of people really love TCU as a dark horse team out there. Many things seem crazy until they happen, is my point. Like if you're picking Iowa State to win the Big 12, you're probably not going to have a lot of company, and you're probably going to be called crazy. But yet, what do we say? We don't make fun of predictions on this show, because every year the college football season ends up giving us a result or multiple results that, if were predicted in August, would have been laughed at. So we know it's going to happen somewhere this year. It's just, will the Big 12 be the place where it does happen? I told you earlier in the show, I was looking at Texas today. Like, Texas may be my favorite to win the Big 12. If I had to pick this today, Texas may be my favorite. Selfishly, I will root for Iowa State, as I've already told you. I won't let it get in the way, but I will root for Iowa State. But Texas may be my favorite. But my question is this, because I don't think there's a ton of separation regardless of who you're picking. I want to know who's coming from that middle of the pack. Now, when I say middle of the pack, I mean perceptionally. Because a team like Oklahoma State, I think a lot of folks put in the middle of the pack, like the second tier, if you will, in the Big 12. The reality is they may very well be a top 10 team this year. So perception and reality, two different things. But let's talk perception nationally. Like if you live in Raleigh, North Carolina, you know Oklahoma, and then you know Texas as the challenger every year, but you're not well versed in other Big 12 matters. You got Brock Purdy, my guy up at Iowa State, who's returning. You got Charlie Brewer at Baylor, new head coach, but you got a quarterback returning there. You got Skylar Thompson returning at Kansas State. And, of course, Spencer Sanders, we were talking about there with Oklahoma State. And you've got a lot of continuity and a lot of experience at the most important position in America at the quarterback spot in this conference. And I didn't even mention Texas, for example. So you got it there. And then also, Colin showed you a couple of times that little grid schedule. I prefer helmets on the grid, but hey, logos work too. If you'll take a look at the Big 12 schedule this year, either now or in your own leisure time, it's not going to be a situation for Oklahoma, for example, in the on the fifth column from the left. You notice how they start the season in conference play? It's not like that Oklahoma State schedule where they get a couple of tune-ups and then a bye and then they ease into it. Oklahoma's got K-State, Iowa State, and Texas first 3 weeks. They take a bye and they've played TCU, Texas, Iowa State, and Kansas State all before Halloween. In other words, it's not a time to have a bunch of guys missing potentially half a season because of drug or DUI offenses or maybe injury. Not the time. Not the way you want it to shake out there. So Oklahoma State, I think, has a schedule in this conference, as much as I was talking about Texas there. Oklahoma State, if I were to pick a schedule out of all those, I'd take the Oklahoma State schedule. It's well-spaced. I don't have this 3-game stretch where I'm going through any kind of gauntlet. I get to ease into things, even if I don't need to. I get to ease into things a little bit, you would expect at least. So I know we talk a lot about the SEC, and it's anyone's game, and it's the antithesis of that in the ACC. But the other of the big three this year, being the Big 12, I think there's a misconception out there. Oh, it's just Oklahoma's to lose. Well, you can say that if you want to. I mean, they've earned the right to have benefit of the doubt. I'm just telling you, it would have surprised me last year if anyone else came out of that conference. It would not surprise me this year. I hope I haven't been unclear.